Well, a little talk of horrors, little talk of terror, little talk of horrors, whoa. We gonna talk a little horror, we gonna talk a little terror, we gonna talk a little horrors, whoa. Shada-ding, da-da-ding, da-ding-a-ding away. Look out, shada-na-ba-boop-ba-ba-dee-doo, better way. Wah. You better run up everywhere, you better run up everywhere, you better run up everywhere, I'm gonna tell about a little talk of horrors, little talk a little terror, little talk of horrors, whoa. Dancing. Little Talk of Horrors is brought to you by the Wash Away Seed&Spark campaign. Support indie horror. When you pre-order the already finished feature-length film, Romeo's Distress on Blu-ray, you are directly contributing to the budget of our next feature-length film, Wash Away. Help us make more punk rock movies. Watch the trailer for Romeo's Distress right now.
Cheesecake of love, cheesecake.
Uncle Elmo, have you ever been in love?
Well, there you go on the love thing again. You're always speaking of it. It seems to be the reason behind the actions you've taken.
I even try to forget about her, but I just can't.
What is more important than love?
Nothing.
That's right.
Nothing is more important than love.
That's right. You must just seize the day. Carpe diem.
Carpe diem.
No, scream it. Carpe diem!
I think it's time that we acted.
Like what we talked about?
Family. Can you really put a price on something like that? On your family's security?
I know you're up to something, huh?
How hard can we really go on them, you know?
As hard as we want.
You can do whatever you want to me, but it will never change the fact how much I care about your daughter.
Welcome to another episode of Little Talk of Horrors. My name is Jeff Frumess. I am your host, and today we have a very special episode. But before we dive in, first a little housekeeping. I am currently knee-deep in editing the first 37 episodes of Little Talk of Horrors, this show that you're watching right now, and this video is kind of a little update just on the progress of that. It's very time-intensive editing. I'm trying to put as much B-roll as I can into the show to make it as entertaining and as engaging as possible. And that just takes time, especially when you're just one guy. Once the editing is done, I'm going to launch the Seed&Spark campaign for Wash Away, my next feature-length film, which is about this therapist who gets revenge in a really nefarious and nasty sort of way. So it is like a revenge thriller. The campaign will only have one perk, whatever you want to call it. It's the pre-order for Romeo's Distress, my last film, which is complete, and this fucking light shut off because it's a piece of shit and I hate it. So support indie horror, people. So that will be launching soon. Let's talk about Mandy. Wow, what a movie. I can't get this movie out of my mind. It's not so much a movie as it is an experience. At least if you go to see it in the theater, you have to see this film in the theater. It is not something that you watch on a tiny little screen. You need to hear it loud and proud. You need to see this large frame. You know, Panos, the director, every frame is like a painting in this film. He's doing so much on a visual level. It's just, I've seen it twice now, and I really think you could keep going back and watching it over and over again. And you pick out something new. Panos is painting with a film canvas. Every frame is a painting, and you can see like this beautiful pastiche of influence. He talks about I think the revenge angle is the easiest to market it, especially with a movie like this with Nicolas Cage. You don't want to hear, oh, it's a fairy tale with Nicolas Cage. You want to hear, rage, Nicolas Cage doing the rage cage in a revenge thriller. And that's obviously definitely there, but I think that this is more of a fairy tale. And the reason why I think that is because of the ending. Just sort of like coming to the realization, as the last frame rolls, there's this end scene, spoilers. It's like very quick. When I was recording the Q&A that you're going to see later in this video, I actually caught the very tail end of it. You see Mandy's drawing table with this picture of Red, played by Nicolas Cage, and he's sort of like intermeshed with the tiger, which is like his spirit animal. And it just made me realize, I was like, wait a minute, like Mandy, this is Mandy's fantasy. Mandy made this up. This is all in Mandy's head. Not that she, like, it's her dark fantasy. Because the movie starts with, Red and Mandy living together in kind of it's like a happily ever after thing. And perhaps that's what Mandy is doing. Mandy is using her imagination to shake things up after everything has become so safe, too safe from what her life once was. It's like being sort of addicted to pain, I think people in general, making a broad generalization, not trying to, pinpoint anybody's pain in particular, but I think on a broad generalization, sometimes when you experience pain all the time, or where you're in a state of pain all the time, there's almost like a familiarity to it. And when it's gone, the human condition causes us to, crave it. And I think maybe there's like a little bit of that in my theory, being that Mandy just wants to shake it up, wants to remember what it is to be, desired, wants to be revenged in a way, or, kind of like what would you do to prove your love to me sort of thing. She's like so engrossed in these mass paperback. But I think there's so much more going down. The characterization is there. It's just in the smallest of details. It's not in the dialogue. It's not in the conversations that they have per se. It's in the picture of what we're seeing. A great example of this is in the very beginning, we see, Red chopping down trees as a lumberjack. It's the year 1983. And as they're loading onto a helicopter, one of Red's coworkers offers him a beer, and Red declines. And then if you notice, Red doesn't drink. He doesn't drink for the whole first half of the movie, and then it's only after Mandy is killed and we see this amazing scene, which really is, I heard Panos there, or maybe it was Nicolas Cage, or somebody was talking about how, he walks into the bathroom and it kind of turns into like a play. You feel like you're on a play set, or like a set at like a theater. And Nicolas Cage does this unbroken take where he goes from, we see him go through this range of emotions that just ends in just pure agony. During this process, he pulls out a bottle of what must be vodka, and he starts just drinking it, downing it. And it made me realize, it was like, perhaps this dude had a drinking problem, and it's like he begins to unleash his demons once the worst thing that could happen. Maybe it's like one of those things where, Mandy's like, what would Red do if I was gone? Like, how would he show how much he loves me? Would he like kill for me? Would he do this for me? Would he do that for me? And so it's like he's become this avatar for the audience and for her. And we sort of like see what her process would be for him. At least this is my theory. And so he's drinking, he just starts downing this vodka, and as he downs it, he gets crazier and crazier, and he starts holding his throat. It was such a nice touch. I'm sure it was Nicolas Cage put that in, where he's like, his throat must be burning because he's just downing pure vodka. So it's like weird, like that seems like a moment of realism in this surreal reality that we are watching. Then he goes and he picks up his old crossbow from what seems to be like an army buddy, the dude who was in Predator, the first Predator movie, that loves to shave his dry face, which must be very painful. I don't know why he likes to do that in that movie, but whatever. And so you get the feeling, okay, Red has had a very violent past that maybe involves some alcoholism. And it's like he meets Mandy, and then all of a sudden, he becomes a lumberjack. He lives in this peaceful forest where he's in his happily ever after with Mandy. The backstory, When did this go out? And then what about Mandy's backstory? She has this like crazy scar on her face. She seems kind of quiet, but there's also like this like goodness about her, like this purity, like this, she gets very sad for this very symbolic. I don't even know what that is all about. If anybody can unpack that, I would love to know about the dead animal in the forest. I'm sure it's connected to her soliloquy that she has with Red about her father beating the birds into the ground. But she feels genuine empathy for this dead creature. So she's like this person that feels and is very sort of also seems like very introspective and into her art and into her books, and has just this very quiet life with her man, and that's it. That's all there is to it. But the scar to me suggests that Mandy had a very violent past. Something really bad happened to her. Maybe Red saved her from something really violent, or maybe we see at the very end the meeting for the first time. She already has the scar, so maybe she already had the scar. In any case, she had this very violent thing happen to her. She has a past trauma that we don't know about. It's completely emphasized in the scar, and what's amazing is the audience. It's like me, I can go through my thought process as an audience member and just like write it. Like, what happened to her? How did this happen to her? And then, the only interaction we see, because like I said, I think that the fantasy begins when she reads Under the Crimson. This was her family. Maybe her family abused her. Maybe Red saved her from her family that she was abused by. And now she's like playing out this fantasy of Red unleashing his wrath on her family. And it's interesting that Jeremiah Sands, who is this great, like, again, another, like, beautiful blending of characters. Like, his character is written in the visuals. We see the album, and we suddenly know that he's, like, this Charles Manson proxy a failed singer-songwriter who turned to being a cult leader and gets this Manson-like family to join him and help him, commit these acts of violence, and that, they're planning on building a new church. But he calls, there's Brother Swan, there's the mother, there's a sister, they're a family. And so maybe this is like Mandy's family from the past, and she's using Red as this device to exact violence on them, to make meaning, to make sense of the violence that's happened in her past. And it's all done through these novels that she reads in a weird kind of way. And but yeah, going back to Jeremiah Sands, he holds up the album. It's Jeremiah Sands sings, and the lyrics are Jeremiah Sands was a da-da-da-da man, and it just tells you everything you need to know. And it's like, you don't need to know that much, but it gives you like kind of like a background. It's like the fact that the woman with the gray hair in the credits, she's called Mother something. I forgot what her name is. But maybe she really is Jeremiah's mother. There's like that whole level too. And like, is he like fucking his mother? Or is that Mandy's mother? Is Jeremiah her brother? And I don't mean literally her brother. I'm just saying, and that's the other thing too. Just much like David Lynch works with like themes and like pastiches, and like, you look at Wild at Heart and like you see the match lighting, and it's or the use of the Wizard of Oz in Wild at Heart. Fuse these things together, fusing Elvis and Marilyn Monroe and Wizard of Oz into Wild at Heart. Maybe that's what Panos is sort of doing here. He's fusing the Manson family and Legend, and all these little things. Evil Dead with the chainsaws, and Mad Max. The whole movie is like Mad Max, and then you have the Cinnabite bikers. That's kind of obvious, and it's just really friggin' cool. It's just a great movie, and honestly, I'm thinking about going and watching it again for a third time. I really am. I really feel like I need to see it again. I think that, God, I'm gonna butcher her name. Lily Animapour. The Iranian American filmmaker that did A Girl Who Walks Alone at Night and The Bad Batch. And The Bad Batch was not particularly well received, but I feel like The Bad Batch works in a very similar way that Mandy works. Although Mandy has seemed to like tap into the cult film zeitgeist right out of the gate. This is going to become a cult classic. I just know it, especially with stuff like the Cheddar Goblin. But before I get there, she's a very interesting filmmaker too, and she kind of works in the same way that Panos works, in the same way that David Lynch works, and she's kind of like working with like feelings and themes, and in particular, what Panos is doing with Nicolas Cage is so beyond brilliant. Like I said earlier, Nicolas Cage is an avatar of emotion for the audience. I don't know anything about Red, but I know Red's pain, And watching him go through these emotions, I'm thinking about things in my own life. I think that's part of the goal. You're making the audience feel something from their past. And then it's all of a sudden we become Red. We get fused into Red. So just the way that Mandy is using Red for her fantasy, the audience uses Red for her fantasy. So it may not be a lot of characterization for Red, but it's not about that. It's about emotion. And Nicolas Cage is giving one of the finest performances of his life. When he's chained up, with the barbed wire, the pain in his eyes, and he talks about it. He talks about how he was able to tap into stuff from the past. And, he has this, he says his acting style is something called nouveau shamanism. And, part about being a shaman is like you become a conduit for supernatural forces or forces that are greater than yourself. And I really think that Nicolas Cage very much is an actor shaman. He takes it to another level. He's not just acting. He is making himself a channel for all sorts of influence. And, he talks about in interviews, he is very, very literate in the history of cinema, and he is pulling from so many interesting places when he takes these roles. Early silent films, he talks a lot about German expressionism. He talks about something that I guess he coined in addition to nouveau shamanism, Western kabuki. That's also his sort of style of acting. And if you really just want to see a magnum Nicolas Cage performance, just watch Bad Lieutenant, Port Authority, New Orleans. He's doing so much in that. Like halfway through the film, he just starts talking like Humphrey Bogart. I don't know why. And he's also doing like this crazy shoulder slump the whole time because his character has back pain. Nicolas Cage is just like, yeah, I'm gonna slump one shoulder down a little bit to make it look like my character's in a lot of pain. So yeah, there's just a lot going on in this movie. Even though there's nothing going on in Mandy, there's a lot going on in Mandy, and I love it for that. I really, truly do. I'm very excited to see what Panos does next. Oh, another really interesting piece of evidence that suggests that this is Mandy's fantasy. Going back to her scar, the other thing is, so if Mandy has experienced violence in the past, as her scar suggests, it would tie into this idea that this is a fantasy because we don't see any violence towards women. There's only one thing we see that could kind of like negate that. When Red at the very end, he takes the mother's head, the lady with the silver hair, and he throws it at Jeremiah's feet when he's in like the center, the heart of this church that he's building. But we never actually see any on-screen violence, man-on-woman violence. I will take it back that you do see the mother smack Mandy across the face. So we have those two pieces of violence, but there's no violence of a man harming a woman on screen. You see them burning the body, but the body, we don't ever see Mandy in the shroud. We just see, it's implied that Mandy is wrapped up in there, which is another very interesting thing, as if to show us a disconnection from what's going on. Mandy's not really being burnt. Mandy is imagining herself being burnt and how Red would weep for her because to remind her of how much he loves her and the lengths that he would go to for her. And so we never actually see her die. So that's very interesting too. And notice that Jeremiah gives sister whoever the gun. He doesn't hold the gun to her head and play Russian roulette. He gives her the gun. And I mean, part of that is to prove her love, but also part of that is that there's no like connection of men harming women in that sort of way. I don't know. That's just part of my theory though. Another piece of evidence that suggests this is a fantasy happens when Red walks into his living room. He sees the Cheddar Goblin commercial, and the TV cuts to the emergency broadcast system, and a voice on the TV says, "This is only a test. This is only a test." And it's Mandy's test. It's Mandy's fantasy. It's Mandy's suggestion. And so it's letting the audience know in a subtle way that this is not really happening. I think, again, the two biggest smoking guns, though, are, at the very end, we see that Red is, in this place where there's the three moons and the jagged rocks. And the very end, the very last frame at the end, the tail end, the after credit scene where we see Red meshed. And then there's this thing going on with Red and the tiger. He's got tiger on his shirt when he goes to see the chemist. And I heard Rebecca McKendry on Shockwaves when they were talking to Panos, and they were talking about how the chemist is sort of like this god. I don't know if he's a god, but maybe he is some sort of, or maybe he's like a demigod or something. And when Nicolas Cage faces him, something happens where the tiger is released. So there's a lot of symbolism there too about Nicolas Cage becoming a tiger, or like or Red channeling this tiger spirit. Maybe that was part of his past, who he was before, that he's like this fierce protective tiger for his loved one. We're also treated to these weird sort of animations of Mandy in like a very heavy metal animation sort of way. That sort of like, they're like little interludes. And one of them, it shows Mandy standing over a wounded tiger man. And then the very next thing that it cuts to is Nicolas Cage. It's daytime. He's lying on the forest floor. He's beaten the Cenobites. He's taken the acid, which might lend to why we have these cartoonish sort of things happening. And he's just sort of laying there. And it's sort of like to symbolize that he is like, he's turned into this tiger man, you know, which happens also after the tiger's released from the cage. So there's something going on there as well. Again, I don't know how all these pieces necessarily fit together, but like I said, there's something going on here. Going back to that commercial for a minute, and let's chat with the Cheddar Goblin now. Cheddar Goblin. So now we have come to the segment of the show that I have truly been looking forward to. For the last week or so, I haven't been able to talk about it, and now it's finally happening, and he's calling in any second. I was able to lock down an interview with the Cheddar Goblin himself. That's right. He is calling long distance from sunny California, where he lives, and we are going to talk about his experience working on Mandy. So let's... there he is. There he is. Hello, Mr. Goblin. Welcome to Little Talk of Horrors. It is an honor to have you on the show. I can't even tell you how excited I am. I was blown away by your performance. How are you doing? That's great. That's great. That's great. So, how did you get involved with this production? How did you get how'd you get on Mandy?
Mandy.
Wow.
Cheddar.
Very cool. Very cool.
Cheese.
So, what was it like working with the mastermind behind Too Many Cooks? For those who don't know, the director and creator of Too Many Cooks did this commercial segment for Mandy.
Wow. Nicolas Cage.
So what is it like to have to regurgitate macaroni and cheese onto small children over and over again?
Mandy.
Holy crap. Wow. Can you hear that, folks? 100 takes. They had to do that 100 times. Those kids had to sit under a regurgitating goblin 100 times before they got what they needed to for the scene. Wow. That is unreal. Wow. So, how long have you been lactose intolerant?
Nicolas Cage.
But the role called for it. You needed to, vomit up mac and cheese. Wow, it's unreal. That's unbelievable. Truly. That's a testament to you. Very cool. Very cool.
Rage Cage. Nicolas Cage.
Right. Oh, that's right. Yeah. So the guy, I did know that. So the guy who directed the Too Many Cooks thing for Adult Swim directed this segment of the movie as well. So you worked with him as well. That's great. That's great. So what does it take to get into a role like this? How do you become? I know you are are you kind of doing a method thing since you already are a goblin to begin with? Wow. Wow. That is that's very interesting. Oh man, I got that's crazy, man. That sounds like a lot. What made you want to become an actor in the first place?
Nicolas Cage.
So did you get to meet Nicolas Cage while you were working on the movie? Wow.
Nicolas Cage.
Wow, that is really cool. Well, listen, I just want to thank you so much for, coming on the show, and it's an honor to talk to you, and yeah, man, I can't wait to see what you do next, so thanks.
Nicolas Cage.
All right, peace. So there's this company called Legion M that is involved with the making of Mandy. They're like one of the company's production. I guess they're kind of like a production company that's like funded by fans. I can't explain it, but they were doing some promotional events, and one of them was like a meetups across the country at Alamo Drafthouse before the film. And basically, if you show up, you get like these really cool enamel pins and posters. And so I signed up to be one of the meetup leaders or whatever, and I led a meetup at my local Alamo at the Alamo Drafthouse in Yonkers. And one of the activities that we did was we all went around and talked about our favorite Nicolas Cage performances, or just said, what we loved about Nicolas Cage. So I'm going to cut to that now. And then afterwards, I also taped the Q&A that happens right after the screening of Mandy on September 13th, 2018 at the Egyptian Theater in LA. Kevin Smith was the moderator, Panos was there, Linus Roache, and Nicolas Cage were all interviewed. And it's pretty interesting. So stay tuned and check that out. And now a quick word from our sponsor.
Little Talk of Horrors is brought to you by the Wash Away Seed&Spark campaign. Support indie horror. When you pre-order the already finished feature-length film, Romeo's Distress on Blu-ray, you are directly contributing to the budget of our next feature-length film, Wash Away. Help us make more punk rock movies. Watch the trailer right now.
Life is not fair. It's not. It's just chaos. Swirling chaos. We're just dealt the cards and we have to play them the best we can. We have to accept that. The sooner we can, the sooner we can get on with life. But sometimes we get lucky. Sometimes the perfect opportunity just falls right in your lap. Like an accident. But it's not. It's not an accident. In fact, it's not luck. It's not a choice. It's fate.
Right. Nicolas Cage is
Nicolas Cage was a pilot. It was directed. It was directed by Werner Herzog.
But that's one of his best things.
All right, I think we're live. Okay, hello, welcome to our the Rage Cage Society of Yonkers Alamo Drafthouse Gourmandizers and things. And we have a nice little crew, although some of them went to go play a Jurassic Park game, but that's okay. We'll get to them later. And so we're here. We met up before the screening of Mandy because we love Nicolas Cage so much, and we wanted to discuss him and talk about how great he was. I will say, as I say this quite often, Nicolas Cage is like tofu, and he is going to taste like whatever you season him with. So if you give him a shitty director, he is going to give a wacky performance. If you pair him with somebody, depending on who you pair him with, he's going to be like the shit. And so I don't think there's no such thing as a bad Nicolas Cage film. There's no such thing. It's just, what kind of Cage are you getting? And so we're going to ruminate on this now a little bit. And so which way, does anybody want to start? I'll go first. I'm going to go first. Ready? I'm going to pick Bad Lieutenant, Port Authority in New Orleans. This is a fantastic Nicolas Cage film, fantastic Nicolas Cage performance. The whole exchange with him smoking crack and talking about whether he has a lucky crack pipe or not, and then they shoot the guy dead, and he goes, shoot him again because his soul is still dancing, and then there's this weird like music, and then it turns, he's like, get that iguana out of here, and there's just like a random iguana on the table, and it's just pure, like, it's just majesty. It's wonderful.
It's like what he must be thinking 24/7. It's what Nicolas Cage is thinking 24/7.
I concur. This is Sean, by the way. Hello.
Howdy. How you doing?
Hey.
I'm going to say my favorite moment in a Nicolas Cage movie is probably. Oh, I had it here. Okay. Well, my favorite, like Deadfall. The whole performance is hilarious. Absolutely comedic fucking genius. But I'm gonna go basic, and I'm gonna say was Face Off, when he says I could eat a peach for hours. It's just totally hilarious.
I love it.
Great. And Face Off is just like, yeah, I think number 2 Face Off is, and it's weird because like obviously he's become famous for just taking any role lately, which is kind of a shame, and I feel bad. I feel like a bad fan for not seeing as many recent Nicolas Cage movies as I should be doing, but I was provided by this amazing list by
Ron.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Everybody say thank you, Ron.
So this is awesome. Now we have a list to go, and I can check out all the neglected Nicolas Cage movies.
The dedication, yeah. It's great. And I will say this, Nicolas Cage was quoted as saying, being an actor is the only profession where you get chastised for trying to work hard. And I agree with that. I think if you're an actor and you like being in movies, even if you've got, financial problems, more power to you. That's just how many more Nicolas Cage films we have left off.
And I will say, Jeff, you're right, because I think the best Nicolas Cage movie, or the best Nicolas Cage performances are the ones where the filmmakers just let him be Nicolas Cage.
Yeah.
And just go nuts.
Well spoken. All right, I'm flipping this around. We have Suzanne. Hi, Suzanne.
Hi.
What is your pick for Nicolas Cage? Your Nicolas Cage film?
Well, he's done over 80 films. I mean, there's a whole list here. My personal pick would be City of Angels. I love that movie, and that's when I absolutely fell in love with Nicolas Cage by watching City of Angels. I mean, he was just so ethereal and fantastic in that film, especially with Meg Ryan. And I just, that's my all-time favorite film.
That's great. All right, we're gonna roll. Let's roll back this way. We have Nick. Hi, Nick.
I got nothing to say.
You got nothing to say. All right.
Deathfall rules.
All right, Deathfall rules. We got Ron. Ron is the one who made the spreadsheet. Ron, if you'd like to tell us about your favorite Nicolas Cage film performance.
It's probably The Rock, just because what's great about The Rock is it's just a straightforward action pick, but it's got certain elements that weren't in the script. It was clearly like a Nick Cage idea when he does things like, what in the name of Zeus's butthole? Like, that is an improvised Nick Cage line. There's no way they wrote that. There's a whole bunch of touches like that throughout the movie that I think make it awesome.
Yeah, that's great. Hey, man, you want to talk about your favorite Nick Cage film?
I think it's going to be this one.
All right. All right, that's cool. What about you? You have a favorite Nick Cage film?
Maybe The Rock.
Okay, The Rock. That's good. All right, coming around. I'm sorry, your name again, sir?
Anthony.
Anthony, nice to meet you, Anthony. What's your favorite Nick Cage film?
I want to say Face Off. Toss up between Face Off and The Rock.
Cool.
A lot of action, a lot of different faces and characters he has to play in these movies.
I dig it. I dig it.
And
I
the
dig
action
it.
sequences, great action sequences.
Absolutely. That's wonderful. Hello.
Hi, I'm Val. I just want to say, look at me. I've got the hair. I've got the teeth. I've got the eyes. Look outside that window, Peggy Sue. I've got the car. I'm the lead singer. I'm the man.
That and what's that from, Val?
Peggy Sue got married.
Wow. Just the dedication. I have to say, Val, bravo. That was excellent.
Oh boy.
Hi, Will.
Hi. Okay, I don't have like a specific quote from Nick Cage.
Yeah.
It is just 3 specific movies that he's wonderful in: Vampire's Kiss, Wicker Man, and like you have to give him 100% credit for being in 2 Ghost Rider movies and just doing his all-out best to be exactly who he thinks Johnny Blaze is, and that you have to appreciate for Nicolas Cage. He is exactly who he says he is, and that's the most important part about him as an actor and as a performer, is that he's there to perform and just go completely bananas, and you either take it or leave it, and that's what makes him an artist.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. Hello. Do you have anything to say? Would you like to comment on a Nicolas Cage film?
I will comment on Con Air, but I don't have a quote, but I am going to appreciate the man's hair that entire movie. That was my favorite part.
Gorgeous
was
hair.
the haircut.
Gorgeous hair.
The gorgeous flowing locks. Yeah. That
Wonderful.
cut, a girl can dream.
Beautiful. Hello, sir.
Put the bunny back in the box.
I told you to put the bunny back in the box.
Not my favorite movie. I actually hated that movie when it came out.
Okay, so what is your
But I love it in
favorite Nick Cage
retrospect. All right, my favorite Nick Cage movie is the Superman Returns movie that plays in my head when I imagine the possibilities. My second favorite is Face Off because it's amazing. My actual favorite quote is said to him, not by him. I say it all the time with my wife. You want me to take his face off? That whole exchange.
That's classic. And I'd just like to say my favorite quote of Nicolas Cage is from The Rock. And it's when, wait, hold on. Before we get there, we got to talk to Marcus first. Hi, Marcus.
Hey, what's up?
Marcus, tell us about your favorite Nick Cage film or performance or quote or whatever.
Okay, so I've got a few. One of them has to be from Deadfall. Nicolas Cage screwing a bed is probably one of the greatest things I've ever seen in my life. But also the fact that he's just unstoppable in that movie is one of the greatest things. But I have to throw it back to 8mm, which was one of the films I fell in love with Nick Cage with. But I'd say that, Snake Eyes, and Deadfall are my favorites. But my favorite performance of all time of his is him in Kick-Ass.
Oh my God, as Big Daddy.
Big Daddy.
Can we just talk about the fact that Nicolas Cage, when asked about or when interviewed about playing Big Daddy in Kick-Ass, he was trying to channel Adam West. He actually was. He was his voice, and if you listen to his voice, he is doing an impression of, or he's trying to channel Adam West in that film. So go back and rewatch Kick-Ass and recognize that is Nicolas Cage doing Adam West. So it's not
and it's totally spot on.
Yeah.
But
I
I
agree.
think I'd say one of my favorite quotes, and it's not the most typical one from Wicker Man, is when he's standing there asking how that damn doll got burned. Because you can tell that he just kept going and kept going. How'd I get burned? How'd I get burned? How'd I get burned? How'd I get burned? I love that.
The passion is there. Eric, last but not least.
Oh no.
You got anything to say, Eric? You don't have to say anything if you don't want to.
My favorite Nicolas Cage movie?
Yeah.
I would say Adaptation.
Okay.
I haven't seen I feel like I've seen a lot of his movies, but it was a long time ago. So that's the one that really stands out.
That's cool. Critical Cage.
Yeah.
That's cool. Because, I mean, there's so many different... You have Kooky Cage, you have Crazy Cage, you have Classic Cage, you have Critical Cage. Because Cage just comes in so many flavors. So I think that concludes our discussion of Nicolas Cage. We're so excited to see Mandy. Say goodbye to everybody. Goodbye. Bye. And that's the end. And that's the end of this broadcast. We are tuning out. Tuning out.
Little Talk Talk of Horrors is brought to you by the Wash Away Seed&Spark campaign. Support indie horror. When you pre-order the already finished feature-length film, Romeo's Distress on Blu-ray, you are directly contributing to the budget of our next feature-length film, Wash Away. Help us make more punk rock movies. Watch the trailer for Romeo's Distress right now.
Cheesecake of love, cheesecake.
Uncle Elmo, have you ever been in love?
Well, there you go on the love thing again. You're always speaking of it. It seems to be the reason behind the actions you've taken.
I even try to forget about her, but I just can't.
What is more important than love?
Nothing.
That's right.
Nothing is more important than love.
That's right. You must just seize the day. Carpe diem.
Carpe diem.
No, scream it. Carpe diem!
I think it's time that we acted.
Like what we talked about.
Family. Can you really put a price on something like that? On your family's security?
I know you're up to something, huh?
How hard can we really go on him, you know?
As hard as we want.
You can do whatever you want to me, but it will never change the fact how much I care about your daughter.
There you go.
Nice to stand in front of a movie that people like for a change. Welcome to the Q&A portion of the evening. Before we head anywhere, man, just one more round of applause for Mandy. Fuck.
Woo!
I know when we watch a movie, we're supposed to identify with the protagonist in some way, shape, or form. Hopefully see ourselves reflected in the main characters and whatnot. I wish I could tell you that as I watched that movie, I identified, with Nick Cage's character, but I'll be honest with you, it's very telling that I identified more with Linus Roache's character because I too would offer to suck somebody's dick to save my life. So, movie was right up my alley, man. Y'all got to watch it in this wonderful theater. I got to watch the last half hour with you, but I had seen the movie earlier. They let me watch it. I had it on my laptop and stuff. So I took it to, of all places, I was like, you know what? I'm going to watch this movie while I eat lunch at Veggie Grill. And about an hour into shit, man, people started coming over and be like, something wrong with Beyond Burger? And I was like, no, it's this fucking movie right here, this movie. I loved this movie to death, man. I was just telling Panos, it was like, it was made for me to some degree, man. This is my kind of flick. This reminds me of the kind of flick that made me want to be a filmmaker in the first place. Not because I was like, I could do something like that. I couldn't. This is masterful fucking filmmaking that we just saw. But it's the kind of movie that inspires. Yeah, it absolutely is. And it's no surprise that it came from a guy who did another fucked up movie that I absolutely adore and stuff. So we've got the director and two of the cast here tonight, and we're going to sit around and talk to them and whatnot, get to know them and find out how this happened. Let's bring them out one by one, ladies and gentlemen. The man responsible for what you just saw. The guy because of whom you're going to lose a little bit of sleep tonight or somewhere over the course of the next week, man. Give it up for Panos Cosmatos. You fucking genius. A man who, I'm a big Homeland fan, so this season he was all up in Homeland, and he was wonderful and stuff. But I think this goes without saying, tonight he literally gave a balls-out performance, man. Give it up for Linus Roache, ladies and gentlemen. If I got a Mount Rushmore of actors, man, this guy is definitely one of the faces on it, one of my favorite actors. Anything I know about acting that I took into filmmaking, I learned from watching him as a young age, at a young age, watching movies he was in, watching him always swing for the fences, although I think Linus might have stolen that bat for this movie tonight. Give it up for the one, the only Nicolas Cage.
Woo!
Yes. Yes. Yes.
All right, gents. Explain yourselves. Panos, how does something like this first come to you? Fever dream? Is it something that builds up over a lifetime of experience, of visuals, of thoughts and feelings where you're like, I'm going to put them all into one? Or is it that you're following up on Beyond the Black Rainbow and you're like, where do I go from there? How does this happen?
It was a lot of those different things. It was something that built up over the course of a lifetime, absolutely. Same as Black Rainbow. But it was also kind of like an antidote to Black Rainbow because I started writing them at the same time, essentially. And when I was writing Black Rainbow, it was such a claustrophobic, contained, linear or precise kind of world that I needed to write something else that was sort of the exact opposite of that, like the antidote to it, where I could, go more into things that are like an expulsion of these feelings that I was dealing with, you know?
When I sit there and watch this flick, number one, I'm ashamed to also call myself a filmmaker because I'm like, that's fucking filmmaking. Like, as I watched it and as I pulled apart the color palette, everything about it seemed so precise, seemed like such a choice. And I know that it's a job of choices, but I look at your work and I'm like, wow, he made all the right choices. How do you communicate something like this? Like, we got to see it, so we're like, oh, fuck. How do you communicate something like this to people when it doesn't exist?
That's a good question. I mean, I think it's because the way that it's created to begin with is like a very iterative process. It's not just like, I'm like, oh, I want to tell a story about a logger who goes on a killing spree to avenge his loved one. It's like, I love...
Wait, is that what that was about?
No. It's like, I love revenge movies, and I'm interested by how they make me feel. And so I'm going to start writing a revenge movie, and then I just start building like a catalog of images and songs and thoughts, and it starts to build that way, like this weird iterative kind of like almost more like kind of like mashing a sculpture together from pieces of clay and weird things you find, instead of sort of starting from the thought of, I'm going to tell a story and then sitting down at the typewriter and writing. It's a very iterative, it's a very visually and sonically based process that sort of evolves over time.
That sounds like art. Let me ask you this, man. When you have a script for Mandy, is it, well, I guess I should ask them more than you, but is it evident on the page, like what we saw? When you guys both first saw the script, where you're like, oh, I got it down cold? Or did you have to have it explained to you, or like, this is the vision? We'll start with you, man.
To be frank, I didn't get it. First time I read it, I was like, I had no frame of reference for this. I don't know what it is.
You were Chronicles of Riddick.
But true, guilty as charged. Yeah. So I should have known, but I didn't. But then I went and watched Black Rainbow, Beyond the Black Rainbow, and when I went back to the script, I was seeing it through the lens, like you said, of a master filmmaker. And so I started to see it differently, and I started to feel the sort of the consciousness within it, the dreamlike state. And then I talked to Panos, and then the whole thing came together for me.
I had seen Beyond the Black Rainbow, and I really have to thank, first of all, Elijah Wood for this, because he's the one who put it together.
Woo!
We were doing a picture in Nevada called The Trust, and quickly bonded over our mutual enthusiasm over horror films. My take on it was more of an appreciation of the earlier, more archaic horror films from the Hammer collection. But he was more contemporary. And he asked me, have you seen Beyond the Black Rainbow? And I said, yes, it's been a while. He says, well, I have a script that I think you should read called Mandy. And Panos, you should meet him. He wants you to play Jeremiah Sand. And I went out to Vancouver. I was working on another movie called Army of One, and I looked absolutely like Father Tom. I had a long white beard. I was in full Gandalf mode, long white hair. And I sat down with Panos, and he said, I want you to play Jeremiah Sand. And I said, well, why, Panos? And he said, well, I see him sort of as the California Klaus Kinski. And I said, well, I am the California Klaus Kinski. But I want to play Red. I don't want to play Jeremiah Sand. And then, so there was kind of a bit of a stall. I said, well, this is a movie about youth versus age, and I was still looking like Kronos or Saturn or whomever. And I knew it wasn't really going to gel, but then he said something that really fascinated me. He went into a tale about how when he was a child, he liked to watch action figures melt from some sort of heat. I don't know if it was sunlight or some sort of a Bic light or whatever it was. He liked to watch their faces melting, and I said, I think this guy and I could really make a great movie together. And indeed, my face does melt in that movie, so we're back at it. So I knew then that whatever I read in Mandy was even more well enforced by Panos' comment about melting faces.
I would imagine over the course of your career, you take huge fucking swings. You seem brave as hell. Is there ever material that you run into like this where you're like, oh my lord, this goes beyond what I'm comfortable doing? Or when you read something like this, you're like, now I can get my fuck on. Here we go.
Well, both experiences happen on this script because Jeremiah was not the one that I would feel comfortable playing. I didn't have any, how shall I say it, context or life experience to play that part. Whereas I did think that I had the life, not that I was a killing spree, but I did think that I had the life experience to go into, let's call it the internal cauldron of my emotions and pull back something for Panos that would land in an authentic way. I was recovering still many years later from the passing on of my father. And then as I started going to photography, I was going through the failure of my third marriage, and so that I had this understanding of loss. And that all just went into the vessel of Red, on top of which I was just coming out of a wheelchair for 3 months, which really pissed me off. So there was a lot of rage that I could apply to the character in that mode as well. But it quickly got me out of the wheelchair and off the cane, because I had to get up to speed with the fight sequences and the stunt rehearsals and the rehabilitation. So it was like, fast forward, there was no margin for error. You've got to learn all these moves now. Get out of the chair, get off the cane, start moving that leg, and it really helped. So it worked for me on many levels.
It's therapy of all kinds, it sounds like.
It was a totally a therapeutic experience. Physically, my psyche, my well-being, all the way around.
It sounds like you were able to put all of it in there, and up there.
Certainly. And I knew Red would give me that, whereas I didn't think Jeremiah Sand would.
Speaking of sand, you showed a lot of it in this movie. Fuck, man. Did you, in the script, did it say he opens up his robe and goes dick out, or no?
Well, that's an interesting point, actually. It did say that in the script. And
you kept reading?
But that's partly when I went, I don't know if I can do this. And when I spoke to
I feel like no wonder Nick Cage said no.
I didn't say it. You said it. I didn't say it.
But then I kind of, when I talked to Panos, I said, do I have to do that bit? And he said, no, man, I just write that stuff, to give you an idea of what it's about. You don't have to do that. I was like, oh, phew, great, I don't have to do that. That's fine, let's go on, let's do the movie. And as we were getting into the process, and I was realizing the kind of filmmaker that Panos was and the kind of film we were making, I thought, if this was a woman being asked to do this, like Margot Robbie in Wolf of Wall Street, she said, it's right for my character to do this. I thought, I'm shying away from something. It's right for the movie that he just exposes himself, and she laughs at it. You know, I think it's just a good thing. And so I went to Panos and I said, listen, man, if you want to do it, I'm not sure about the jerking off bit, but I'll do the naked bit. And he said, okay, dude, we'll just do it in one shot and very simple. And that's how we did it. I didn't know if it'd end up in the movie, but
I knew you'd come around.
Good for you. And it sounds like you are amenable to compromise. You're like, well, we get to see his dick. I'm losing the jerking off, but we will see his dick. And that's what art is compromise. I thought it was an incredible performance. It was chilling, terrifying. I've always thought of you as a wonderful actor, but I think you took it beyond a place that I knew that you could go. That was scary fucking stuff. What were you channeling? Who is that?
Well, yeah, okay. Well, I mean, the brief version or story would be that, I mean, I've done a lot of introspection in my life, and I spent some time with spiritual seekers and spiritual teachers, and I've seen some of these dynamics, nothing like this guy, but I've seen that the power of the individual who believes they're enlightened and they're actually a narcissist, and it's scary. So I had that as a reference point, but I also, when Panos and I talked, we talked about the whole role. Really what he'd written to me was an amazing expose of the male ego in all its horror, you know, from the enlightened narcissist right down to the golem-like character who's this wretched creature. And it was a chance to just, as you say, put it all out there. And as an actor, I mean, I've always admired Nick because he always takes risks, and that's the kind of actor I want to be too. So this was a chance to just go all in there, but with the guidance of a great director. You need a great director to help you get there too. So
that final scene where we watch you go through a range of emotions, where first you're like defiant, where you're like, I'm your God, and then you're bargaining with them as well, and then you're like, look, you needed me to get to the end of this journey, was fantastic. It was like watching somebody try every card they had left in up their sleeve, and watching the character unfold. Masterfully done. Physical. This performance for you, aside from being psychological, very physical as well, man. Is that, I'm a lazy person and by nature, so the idea of somebody who's like, hey man, you're gonna have to forge a goddamn axe, I'd be like, oh fuck. Can't we just have a conversation about it or something like that? Do you enjoy the physical aspect of the process aside from what it did for pulling you out of the
Yeah, I think so. I'm one of those very strange people that when I drink a lot of coffee, I get tired. I don't get wired. I want to go to bed. And it relaxes me. And when I do stunts, if I have to drive very fast or go into a chainsaw fight with a man twice my size and know very well that one of us could get injured very quickly, I find that it relaxes me. And I kind of feel at home. So I do enjoy the physicality. I do enjoy moving into the fray as opposed to running from the fray. And I think we experienced that while filming. There were a lot of moments there that got pretty close. One of them was all the walls in Jeremiah's cavern were lined with a kind of a gasoline type based oil, and they lit it all on fire, and I had to walk through the tunnel as everything was burning down around me, and I was like, wow, this is very calming. I kind of enjoyed it. Then I noticed everybody running out of the studio where we were filming it, and there were fire hydrant looking things with orange foam coming out and people with gas masks, and I was still walking in the shot, not quite fast enough, but we all cleared the building pretty quickly.
I think we came really close to burning down a historical site.
Yeah.
And the first assistant director was, I was staring at the monitor and I was watching basically the entire place be engulfed by flame. Right. And I was like, this looks so beautiful. And then at a certain point I looked up and the assistant director was like, cut! Because literally, it was literally being engulfed with flame.
Which every first AD loves to hear. We're going to light this all on fire. Also nice to hear that, like, when the world's going to shit, you feel at calm when things are on fire. You're the guy I want to be around when the
Well, I'm
fucking
still
world's
trying
on
to
fire.
figure that one out myself, and I haven't yet, but I hope someday I will. But it doesn't make sense to me either.
An artist has to be fed many meals over the course of a lifetime to get to something like that. Naturally, this is all you up there, but you got influences. Who influences a cat like you? What do I have to watch to get to that?
Well, I think that the two movies that I watched that made it click in my mind that I wanted to actually direct movies was in the late '80s. I watched back to back Evil Dead 2,
nice,
and After Hours by Scorsese, which both have these like really heightened kind of sense of camera movements, and suddenly something clicked for me where I was like, oh, the camera is like a paintbrush, or the camera is like a tool that you use to express yourself, or you can create energy with it. I don't know. Somehow, suddenly that became very clear to me, and that's when I first started wanting to direct. But before that, I was like, the movie I was really obsessed with was The Road Warrior, and I taped it on beta off of cable and just watched it over and over, literally thousands of times. And I was so obsessed with the idea of the post-apocalypse that I, all my G.I. Joe figures, I kind of put tape on them and customize them, and would just play the post-apocalypse.
Word is you melted their faces as well.
Yeah, melt their faces.
Let's stay in that vein, not face melting, but how it all starts. When did you decide you wanted to be an actor? When did it hit you?
Well, both my parents were actors, so I kind of grew up with a lot of crazy people around me. But I do remember being at school, 9 years old, and we were asked to do a little improvisation thing, and I did it. And suddenly I had that moment where the penny dropped. I thought, well, I'm doing something, and they believe me. This is something I could be good at. And I did a little bit of work as a child actor, but it was at a very early age. And
They were always like to a 9-year-old Linus Roache, will you please put your dick away, sir?
It wasn't quite that bad, but yeah. And then I tell you what also happened to me. It was really weird. I saw Rebel Without a Cause, and I didn't know who James Dean was. And I thought I'd discovered him. I go, have you seen this kid? He's amazing. And so I saw him and I wanted to act.
What about you, sir?
Well, I think my first experience of wanting to be an actor is pretty abstract. I remember being about 3 or 4 years old and staring at the television set. We had this wonderful ellipsoid Zenith television set from the 60s, and I would sit there on this little throw rug that was kind of like a magic carpet, and I would stare at the little people inside the TV, and I just tried to figure out how can I get in that television, that weird little place, and be one of those people, because they're so much more interesting than everyone who's around me right now back there. So I want to go in there. And I think that was my first tangible experience of wanting to act. I think, like Linus, it was when I was about 15, and I saw East of Eden for the first time, and James Dean is trying to give his father, played by Raymond Massey, the money for his birthday from selling string beans or something, and Massey doesn't accept it, and he goes through this extraordinary nervous breakdown, and I was just a blob of tears in the audience in this little avant-garde art house theater, Fairfax Cinema, New Beverly Cinema. And is that still there? And I knew then, more than any piece of music, more than any painting, more than anything really, that was what I wanted to do. I wanted to make people feel the way I was feeling when I saw that. And it became very clear to me that was the path that I wanted to go on. It wasn't about being famous or, winning awards. It was about wanting to be James Dean in East of Eden.
You guys spend a lot of time crafting a performance. Like in the case I mentioned before, Homeland last year, you got like 10 episodes to like make us fall in love with, wonder about that character, wonder if he was against our main character. Like, we get to go on a complete journey. Here, you took us on a just as wild, even crazier journey in a shorter period of time. But you guys live in these skins for a bunch of time and then let it go. Like, so here's a question, and it definitely can apply to this movie, but it's really spanning career-wise. Is there any character that you've ever played that you were like, man, I'd love to play that character again? Not necessarily in a sequel or something like that, but just like the chance to inhabit the skin of a unique performance all over again. Either one of you.
I can't say so. I don't think so. I think
when you're done, you're done.
I try to be. Red wine is marvelous for getting it all out of my head and my psyche and my body, and just want to shut it off, and I want to move on. I feel like when you see a picture that you've worked on, you give birth to it and you celebrate it because you've worked so closely with all these people that you collaborate with, and it's important to witness it. But then afterwards, I don't want to look back. I want to move forward. And in this age of sequels and such, it's probably not wise to think that way. But I genuinely prefer to see what's moving forward and not repeating myself.
Yeah, I think that's true. It's the same for me, but when you said it, suddenly there was one role. I played Robert Kennedy once, and that just felt like you're just stepping into an individual who was so extraordinary that you couldn't do enough research. You're never going to touch who that person really is. I felt like, even though I'd made the movie, I kind of wanted to do it again and go into another dimension of him, because I fell in love with him as a person. So he's like one of my idols now. I have pictures of him in my house, and so that was the only time I think I played something, and it changed me as a person playing him. I felt like I was different after it.
How rare is that? Does that ever happen to you? Do you ever get changed by a role?
I guess everything changes me, everything around me in my life, people I meet, experiences on set, different characters I played. I suppose so. I think it all goes into my body, into my life, the way I live my life. So yes.
Let's talk real quick about the practical effects I saw at play in the movie. And now in the digital age, a lot of people would kill people digitally and whatnot.
Right.
That his head looked like a good old-fashioned rubber effect. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Is that important to you? When I made a movie, but when I delved into horror a little bit, I wanted to play with rubber. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, no, we're not here to talk about that. But I will point out, as much as I'm praising this movie, take it with a grain of salt. I did make Tusk. It was important for me when I made a little horror movie. I wanted to play with rubber because that's what I grew up watching. Did I get the same smell whiff off of this?
Yeah, absolutely. To me, I mean, you see a lot of action films lately, and people are getting stabbed and shot, and the blood is CGI, and even if it's completely invisible to the eye, I mean, that's not fucking fun to make, you know? I want to have some fucking fun when I'm on the set and
did you like it?
Making a film, you know? And
didn't you burn enough fucking things down? That's your fun.
Yeah, you know, I'd like to burn some more shit.
Are you like a geeky kid around that stuff at this point? With rubber effects and whatnot? I was so crazy about it. Show me how it's done again.
I'm still fascinating. What it, you know? There's really not that much makeup effects in the film, but you know, I just maybe want to go even deeper into it, hopefully on the next one.
Now, how many times have you seen it with an audience so far, like a big audience?
I only watched it all the way through once with an audience because I can't do it. I get extremely nervous and self-conscious. You know, I can still watch. You know, I can watch Black Rainbow alone in my basement. But I can't watch.
That's how most of us watch that movie, really.
Yeah, but I can't watch it with one other person present.
When you look at it, what percentage-wise did you get close to the original intention? Like at the end of the day, you're like, fuck, man, that's exactly what I saw, or you discovered more along the way and it became a different beast from what you originally intended?
It's always going to change a bit, you know, and I just feel like all the changes have made it better, you know. I feel fucking ecstatic with what we created. You know. Might not be exactly what I originally intended when I first sat down to start creating it, But I think it became something better. Texture. I didn't watch it. I like it more than what it was originally.
The score is a big part of it. Really fucking haunting. A wonderful job. But unfortunately, that gentleman's not with us anymore.
Johan passed away shortly after completing the score, which is just heartbreaking to me. I felt like I'd sort of found a kindred spirit in a lot of ways, because originally I didn't think that Johan would even want to work on the movie. You know, he was one of my first choices because I just assumed he was out of my league. You know, I didn't think that Johan would care to work on a weird heavy metal rock opera, you know. But after talking to him for 15 minutes, I realized that he was an Icelandic metalhead, and that was a huge part of him. And he really loved Black Rainbow, and I was just, whoa, you know, I was so surprised. And I was sad because I felt like we had just started working together, and we were going to continue working together, you know.
Boys, working together, opposite one another. You've got some major scenes, including, you know, the one toward the end. What's the approach? Do you rehearse in advance?
Well, it's a bit interesting because Linus and I met and during rehearsal, and it was like, well, should we go get a beer and talk? And then I thought, you know, I think it's better if you and I just occupy our own separate spaces and keep our distance. And we did. But what's interesting is we would be on set, both in our chairs, sitting side by side, shoulder to shoulder, getting ready to do that skull-crushing scene, and not saying a word to each other, just sitting between takes, just sitting there, picking up each other's auras and sort of sensing one another, but not talking. I guess we were communicating on other levels.
It's great, actually, because I actually find sometimes on a movie set the hardest thing is the socializing. I just want to get on with the work, and it was great to work with Nick because it was just about the work. But I remember thinking, I wonder if it was okay at the end of the night, you know? And so I just turned to Nick and I went, and he went,
yeah, when we were done, I was blown away by what Linus did, and I was thrilled that I didn't play his part. You know, I'm glad it worked out the way it did because he's so extraordinary in the movie. I don't think anyone else could have ever got there the way he did.
By the way, if you have any more parts you're going to turn down, you know. I am available.
He can do it. He can be anything. I know he can.
You guys have covered a lot of ground in your careers. Is there, for actors, like a role that you're like, man, before I leave this world, that's what I would like to play? What's the dream role?
Yeah, and I guess my first love is the ocean. Even before I loved my parents, I was in love with the sea. I know that's true. It is.
This is beautifully put.
I have very strong memories of my connection to the ocean at like 2. And it has been my passion to play Captain Nemo. Because I know there would be no acting please. I would just express my love of La Mer, honor of Jules Verne, and I would smoke seaweed cigarettes and do with a flourish and play piano about the ocean and, you know, do some sort of Claude Debussy piece about La Mer, and I would just rock it, you know, but they're not remaking that movie, you know.
I gotta tell you, as a film fan, as a Nick Cage fan, you playing Nemo, that fills my pants with cement. So
with seamen, I love it.
Yeah, thank you.
Love it.
Stolen joke.
On deck and below deck.
What about? Wow, that's all I'm gonna think about from now until the time I die. I'm like, he should have played Nemo. Like, what a great call. You, sir.
I really don't know. It's a mysterious thing. You sometimes you don't even know what it is until you're in it. But I just want to keep being pushed further and further, going as far as I can with any role I can do. But I mean, I love the thriller genre. That's my thing. That's my jam. So yeah.
What about you? What's next? And that's the worst question in the world to ask a filmmaker. You spend like so much time making this labor of fucking love, it's crafting a one-of-a-kind piece of art, and then some asshole's like, hey, what's next? Like, you know. But unfortunately, what's next?
The other day, somebody in an interview asked me what I was doing in 1983, and I said I was sitting on the carpet watching Masters of the Universe cartoons and playing in television. So that's what's next for me.
Woo! That's how you relax. That's how you unwind and whatnot. Do you know what you want to do next, or like it'll come to you sooner or later?
You know, I have some ideas, but who fucking knows?
Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for the director and the star of Mandy. Woo!
Little Talk of Horrors is brought to you by the Wash Away Seed&Spark campaign. Support indie horror. When you pre-order the already finished feature-length film, Romeo's Distress on Blu-ray, you are directly contributing to the budget of our next feature-length film, Wash Away. Help us make more punk rock movies. Watch the trailer right now.
Life is not fair. It's not. It's just chaos. Swirling chaos. We're just dealt the cards and we have to play them the best we can. We have to accept that. The sooner we can, the sooner we can get on with life. But sometimes we get lucky. Sometimes the perfect opportunity just falls right in your lap. Like an accident. But it's not. It's not